Welcome to our project in child welfare and mental health, the case study of Camilla.
Vignette of Camilla. Client overview. Camilla, a young 10-year-old Mexican-American girl living in San Francisco, is exhibiting problems within both academic and social settings. She is a fifth grader at Marshall Elementary School, a school she recently moved to 3 months ago. Camilla is extremely shy and to herself, thus has a hard time both making and maintaining the few friendships that she has, participating in class, keeping up with her homework, and exerting the same overt sense of confidence so common amongst children her age. Outside of the classroom, a few of the children have resorted to verbally bullying/mocking Camilla. At first, she would quietly and indirectly internalize their abusive words, but recently she has escalated to externalizing behavior, hitting her peers during recess time, talking back/not listening to the staff or her teachers, or having uncontrollable bursts of crying and shaking similar to that of a panic attack. Camilla's teacher, Miss Johnson, first saw her behavior as a result of being at a new school and possessing shy and reserved characteristics. However, it has already been 3 months into the school year, and Camilla's behavior has been persistent and even escalated to violence. Ms. Johnson decided to obtain an opinion from the school social worker to the cause of Camilla's behavior. As Camilla begins to meet with the school social worker, the truth slowly begins to unfold of her problematic home life. Problem. Camilla's initial lack of focus and pure disinterest in her schoolwork and academic success could further prevent her from learning the material necessary for maintaining adequate academic standing and advancement into further education and productivity and well-being into adulthood. This lack of interest was also illustrated socially through her inability to maintain and advance relationships with her peers, thus exacerbating her low self-esteem, self-worth, lack of confidence, motivational levels, and disallowing meaningful relationships and social advancements that could potentially better her academic experience through provision of a support system outside of her home. Thus, the relational problems have now transformed into forms of bullying, which she now has escalated her responses to forms of externalized violent tendencies, for example, hitting her peers and talking back. History and background. Camilla is an only child to Roberto and Myra. In their household, the family holds dearly to Marianismo and machismo values. Lacking adequate financial standing needed to uphold the needs of his family has resulted in Roberto pursuing more longer hours at his job, disallowing his engagement in activities that he enjoys personally and with his family to enhance overall levels of happiness and stronger bonds within the household. This has always been a stressor for Roberto. In an attempt to alleviate the pressure on Roberto to pursue financial stability, Myra would take employment by running down her own food cart amongst the apartment complex that they lived in, feeding other men and women home-cooked meals when their schedules were too busy to prepare food at home. But instead of alleviating stress on Roberto, the culture values machismo he held so dearly would plague this act as incompetence, an inability to slowly provide for his household, thus furthering the stress and tension in the home environment. Current context. Due to his lack of control over his wife's actions, anger started to surface, first in the forms of emotional abuse with persistent insults, humiliation, and criticism to exert a level of power. With his wife unwilling to accept the lowly conditions in which they were forced to inflict upon their daughter, she would continue to run her cart against her husband's will. Unable to accept this deviance from the subordinate position Myra used to possess, externalized aggression would surface through yelling, anger, and even forms of physical beatings, shoving, pushing, holding her head down, and choking, that Camilla has been a witness to. Within the last couple of months, Camilla tried to stand up for her mother by standing in front of her when she began to yell or strike at her. Instead of stopping, her father would translate the verbal aggressions towards her directly. Eventually, this would translate to any negative interaction she would have with her father. Current manifestations. Camilla's home environment has led to her initial internalizing features such as low self-esteem and feelings of worthlessness, lack of trust, anxiety, and depressive features such as lack of concentration on her schoolwork, excessive crying, and withdrawal from friends. Further externalizing features include aggression towards her peers, verbally talking back to those above her, and a worsening in her academic performance. She has also missed excessive days at school without providing an explanation for her absence.
Skills, values, and ethics. Practice skills that are relevant to this case include effective use of both verbal and nonverbal behavior, cultural awareness and social diversity, communication, active listening, empathy and warmth towards the client, knowledge and utilization of strengths-based practice, knowledge of relationship building through counseling and advising sessions, training in cognitive behavioral therapy, group psychotherapy, and any other necessary therapy techniques that could be utilized in this case, screening for any victimization that the child is unaware of or unable to report, and asking the child about his or her day and activities, including the interactions with friends and other people in the neighborhood, provision of a safe environment both within therapeutic settings and in trying to develop this space within a home setting. Skills that are specifically manifested within the realm of mental health include things such as cultural awareness and social diversity, both which influence the way that mental illness manifests itself, how individuals and communities perceive and cope with this illness, and how social workers diagnose, treat, and care for people with mental illness. Empathy and warmth is also an important skill in mental health because they are continuously at stake. The work of social workers requires understanding the patient's thoughts and emotional experiences, as well as effectively communicating their comprehension. This is especially important in a case with a younger child, such as Camellia. Empathy and warmth is really needed to bridge a gap between the social worker and the client. Communication is also needed to build relationships, create solutions, and to negotiate plans for service users. There also needs to be training in cognitive behavioral therapy, group psychotherapy, and any other forms of therapy techniques that would be used within this case.
Practice skills manifestation in child welfare. Empathy and warmth. Children need adults who are willing to pay attention to their behavior and help them communicate their needs and wishes. The therapists need to take special notice of the child. Screening for any victimization that the child is unaware or unable to report, to ensure that the child is unharmed physically or through other forms of mistreatment that can't be seen with the eye. It is important to assessment all components of this case. Simply by asking the child about his or her day and activities, including the child's interaction with friends or other people in their neighborhood, are ways to get details about their life that the children might not provide, especially if children are told to keep domestic violence within the household. Provision of a safe environment. Creating a safe and welcoming environment is something that is needed, especially for children who witness domestic violence or feel unsafe at home. Not only would the social worker and therapist create a safe setting for the children to express their feelings and explain their cases, but to ensure that they are safe after they leave the therapy, specifically at the environment at home.
Core values and ethical principles that are relevant to this case include the value of service. This is granted service to Camellia, a 10-year-old who is in need, by addressing the social problems of both domestic and child abuse. Another value is social justice. Challenging social injustice by pursuing social change for the oppressed. Camelia's father, Roberto, is inflicting upon her and her mother. Also ensures that Camellia has a right to have her basic needs met within her academic and home settings. Another set of values are cultural awareness and competence and the dignity and worth of people. A facet of social injustice aims to make one knowledgeable, pursue competence through expanding professional knowledge, and sensitive to cultural values and diversity this family upholds when confronting the situation. Must also uphold Camelia's differences and ethnic diversity. Another value is human relations, recognizing the importance of working to improve relationships among people in order to restore and promote the functionality of clients, their families, and the community. Another value is interactions with laws, policies, and regulations, which comes into play very much so within this case, because one must act as a mandated reporter. This goes along with the duties to report and protect children under the age of 18 that have undergone any kind of child abuse and/or neglect.
Ethical dilemmas that could arise are: number 1, Camila might say things, but because of the violence and results of the father's abuse, the social worker might spy or invade the little girl's privacy to get the facts straight or to find out if the little girl is hiding anything. The social worker might think the more she knows, the more she can help. However, there might be some things the little girl doesn't believe is necessary or relevant to share during the therapeutic daycare. She doesn't know whether to trust the little girl or do whatever they can do to intervene and figure out on their own stuff about the family situation. Number 2, during one of the meso interventions, the social worker brought in other family members that did not know about the violence in the little girl's home, therefore shared confidential information to outsiders and have destroyed and isolated the family from folks who did not know about their situation. Can result in not wanting to share with the social worker anymore, or limitations on what is shared with the social worker. Number 3, in order to build a positive professional relationship with families, a child welfare worker must have the belief that all families have a right to appropriate and effective services. Service, social justice, integrity. All families have the right to make decisions in the best interest of their family, dignity, and worth of the person. And lastly, all families should be evaluated, taking into account their values and beliefs and perceptions. The social worker might resonate with the case and do things she believes are better in the long run, so she might disregard the family's and child's current needs. Number 4, human dignity. Every human being deserves to be treated with respect and have his or her rights protected. Nonetheless, the social worker might treat the mother or father without respect because the father hurt the wife with no justification and Camila was exposed to this violent behavior. The mother refused to speak about it, and this caused more damage to Camila.
Our intervention plans will be focusing on macro level.
Intervention number 1 and SMART goals. Help Camila overcome any trauma that she may have and or that can develop further, which can have a negative influence on her life later on. She may have a common mental health disorder, which can impact her relationships and self-use. Specific. Therapeutic daycare can address problems with attachment, self-concept, emotional behavior problems, and physical problems in abused and neglected children. Measurable. Go every other day, 4 times a week in the mornings. Achievable. Make sure the social worker has assessments on her feelings of herself, situation in life. Have check-ins in every week to see how she is doing and if there's anything she needs more of or would like more of. Whatever works best for her. If she wishes to dig deeper, then the social worker and the girl can proceed further. Relevant. This is to prevent, if not control, some mental illnesses so it doesn't have a negative impact on herself, life, and relationships. So she may feel in control of her life and not feel lost, alone, or helpless. Also, to not continue practicing the things she witnessed, so she may raise children, biological and non-biological, that won't need to recover from their own childhood. Time-bound. Have intense care. Then, after 6 months, have a 6 months needs assessment to see what her needs are, and if she wishes to continue or not. Also, to dig in more in areas she needs help in. Then another in a year to see where she is at. Also, give her time. She needs to achieve her own personal goals as well.
Intervention 2 and SMART goals. So for our second intervention, we will focus on Camila's self-esteem, assess her to determine the view she has of herself, and offer sessions where we can enhance her self-determination. Specific. Camila will be assessed through a psychological test that determines her self-esteem. This will show both the positive and negative view she has of herself. This test will then determine the negative views Camila has that the social worker will have to focus on in order for Camila to be able to socially interact with her peers, teachers, and overall the people around her. The social worker session with Camila will specifically consist of having Camila develop a list of the things she feels she needs improvement on, why and how they can be addressed. Through open-ended questions, the social worker will allow Camila to address, realize, and self-determine her self-empowerment. Measurable. Psychological tests will be taken every 3 weeks within our regular 1-hour session. Attainable. This intervention is attainable because the sessions with the social worker will be during her time within school and during school days. The tests that Camilla will take are something that the social worker will already be familiar with and thus easily accessible. Relevant. This intervention is relevant because it will follow the generalist intervention model, which promotes a process that has been effective for sessions with individuals struggling with significant traumatic events. Time-bound. Camilla's case is expected to last for at least 1 year. Termination will clearly be stated, as well as the expected outcomes of her regular psychological self-esteem test as time progresses.
So our intervention number 3 will be focusing on help Camilla find her interest in the course field and re-establish her focus on academic success. And the SMART goals are: first, specific. By doing an interest test, find out Camilla's favorite subject and get her join the after-school club. And introduce her with the after-school and tutoring program called the Basic Fund. Measurable. It's easy to keep on track by the attendance. Attainable. The Basic Fund organization based in San Francisco, and they offer a range of programs. And the most important part is all the programs are free of charge. Relevant. By joining either after-school club or the Basic Fund, she will be able to make friends in the group and improve her social skills. And after a while, she will find her own belonging. Time-bound. Depends on her own schedule, participate in after-school club at least twice a week.
Intervention 4 would look into child and parent psychotherapy, in which we would initiate a form of therapy between both Camilla and her mother, which is the non-abusive parent. This would form a dyad, which becomes the unit of treatment. CPP examines how the trauma and the caregiver's relational history affect the caregiver-child relationship and the child's developmental trajectory. These follow the SMART goals because it is first specific. It allows for discoverance of the roots of the abuse, learning effective coping mechanisms, and allowing for healthy parenting strategies to be developed. A central goal is to support and strengthen the caregiver-child relationship as a vehicle for restoring and protecting the child's mental health. Treatment also focuses on contextual factors that may affect the caregiver-child relationship, the socioeconomic stressors. Targets of the intervention include caregivers and child's maladaptive representations of themselves and each other, and the interactions and behaviors that interfere with the child's mental health. Over the course of the treatment, caregiver and child are guided to create a joint narrative of psychological traumatic event and identify and address traumatic triggers that generate dysregulated behaviors and affect. This is also measurable because it would be done weekly in 1 to 1.5 hour sessions. It's attainable because it directly provides services to combat negative attributions about the child, problems in the parent-child relationship, maladaptive parenting strategies, focus upon the safety of the child, affect regulation and how a child controls their emotional reactions, and focus upon traumatic events, which has a relative supervision. In addition, when appropriate, the program targets parental and child symptoms including post-traumatic stress disorder, avoidance, intrusion, and hyperarousal, and internalizing and externalizing features such as depression and anxiety. High relevance ratings make this a more relevant intervention method as well. This means that it has the program was designed or is commonly used to meet the needs of children, youth, young adults, and or families receiving child welfare services. It's also specifically relevant to this case involving Camilla because this would be the next step after more interpersonal therapy is given that allows for their family to create an overall sense of healing. The last thing is that it is time-bound. We would try to implement this therapy for a year, as in 52 weeks, which is recommended based on other studies, and then check for progress. If more time is needed, the therapy sessions will be extended further.
Intervention 5. Finding a counselor or therapist who can help Camilla that comes from a similar background, such as being Latina, speaks Spanish, familiar with Latino culture and gender roles, and etc. Having someone who resonates or understands Camila's background and intersectionality of Camila's experiences could make her counseling sessions more impactful, as there are many considerations such as gender, class, and ethnicity that makes her experience different from other children who witness domestic violence. It is specific because it focuses on Camila's background, coming from a Mexican background, female, and having a family who experiences financial instability. It can further help Camila receive support from any general social worker. It is measurable as they can have counseling sessions once a week. It is attainable because it focuses on Camila's background to provide her with the support that she needs in order to progress with the case, and how they can find solutions to the problem. Having someone who understands and supports you can help her open up, build relationships with the counselor, and finally have someone that she can rely on. It is relevant because children do not feel safe at home if they're exposed to domestic violence, and they don't have anyone to rely on if both their parents can't provide them with support and also one of the parents being abusive. Thus, finally having that one person can provide impactful help to Camila's situation and bridges the gaps that prevents her from finding solutions to her case. The situation is time-bound, as it is set for a year, but is adjustable according to Camila's progress and whether things are getting better or not.
Other levels of the practice. Intervention plans on meso and micro level.
Meso interventions. A social worker administrator will work with their local neighborhood to conduct or lead family counseling and support where the effect of domestic violence is talked about. Family preservation programs are designed to prevent the placement of children outside the home while ensuring their safety. Family preservation services are often characterized by the intensity, 20 to 30 hours per week, short durations, often 6 weeks, and their flexibility in providing a range of therapeutic and support services tailored to the needs of family in crisis. Family preservation programs are designed to address multiple goals, including the protection of children, strengthening family bonds, providing availability in crisis situations, increasing family skills and competencies, fostering family use of formal and informal helpful resources, and preventing unnecessary out-of-home placements of children. Community hotlines for victims and family members that are situated in households where domestic violence is present. Therapy, resources, conflict resolution, and creation of plans, and even getting help from authority are services that can be provided. The school's administration office will facilitate more conservative on dealing with the students to ensure that bullying will not be tolerated in the school. Students will be able to report anonymously to the office if he or she is bullied on campus. Home-based services address the overall needs of the family, including both the children and parents, and focus directly on the contextual factors, such as poverty within this case particularly, that increases stress, weakens families, and elicits aggressive behavior. This service would target functional relations amongst diverse individuals, family, and systemic problems by combining traditional social work with various therapeutic counseling approaches. The use of home-based services have been advocated in response to the multiple problems found among abusive and neglected families, difficulties in providing services in a traditional format, and interest in reducing the numbers of children placed in foster care. It incorporates a number of hands-on approaches that would work to alter the parents' fundamental concepts of self, relationship with others, and beliefs about one's abilities to affect the circumstances of life. Family support services that are available at all times to allow parents access to help immediately in times of stress. Crisis care programs should be made available on 24-hour basis and should include telephone hotline, crisis caretakers, crisis babysitters, crisis nurses, and crisis counseling. Through these programs, parents facing immediate problems could receive immediate support to alleviate the stress of a particular situation. Help should be available over the phone or through in-person counseling.
Micro
interventions. Ensuring that funding is invested in social work and child welfare programs, such as enough money available for social workers, children, and also enough money and resources specifically to improve child welfare. Social and cultural practices that should not be reinforced or practiced again. For example, women being submissive and not saying anything because they don't want to separate the family. The well-being and safety is important. If family separation occurs, the mother or children have the right to not share why or as many details to other folks. Begin new trends of social and cultural values that can be practiced in the United States. Educational campaigns are necessary to make the public aware of the seriousness of child abuse, its implications, and as well as how individuals can make a difference. The effectiveness of prevention strategies will only be realized when the public is aware and committed to preventing and recognizing child abuse. Revising Violence Against Women Act to include diverse populations into their impact. In addition, consider intersectionality that can contribute to different experiences within the topic of domestic violence. Establishing anti-bullying campaigns in schools nationwide, making anti-bullying rehearsals in first week of every semester when school starts.